Real Madrid's transfer summer just produced its most dramatic 48 hours yet, and somehow it isn't even about a new signing. It's about a message. According to reports out of Spain, Rodri has told every club chasing him, Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain, and Bayern Munich included, that there is only one destination he's willing to consider: Real Madrid. While that story was still spreading across football media, cameras at Valdebebas caught something completely different. Vinicius Jr. walked back into preseason training with his contract still unsigned, his future still unresolved, and his own club reportedly prepared to sell him if nothing changes in the coming weeks. Two of the biggest names in Spanish football right now, two completely different situations, both of them converging on the same club in the same week just as preseason gets underway under a brand new manager. So how did Real Madrid end up here, chasing a World Cup winning midfielder with money they don't fully have, while simultaneously letting go of one of their most electric attacking players? Would you sell a player like Vinicius to help fund a player like Rodri? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you might understand exactly why Real Madrid could be facing that decision. But what actually happened this week, and how close is each of these deals to being finalized? Let's get into it. Let's start with the bigger picture, because both of these stories only make sense once you understand the season Real Madrid just had. The 2025-26 campaign ended without a major trophy for the second year running. Xabi Alonso, who had taken over from Carlo Ancelotti, lasted barely 7 months before being sacked following a Supercopa final defeat to Barcelona in Jeddah. His assistant at the time, Alvaro Arbeloa, stepped in, but the club's ambitions were always bigger than a temporary fix. Everything changed when Florentino Perez won re-election as club president. One of his central campaign promises was bringing Jose Mourinho back to the Bernabeu 13 years after his first spell there ended. That promise became reality in June when Mourinho was confirmed on a 3-year deal, tasked with restoring a club that had gone 2 full seasons without silverware. Mourinho didn't arrive alone. Perez also pledged reinforcements across the squad, and this summer has already delivered several of them, including the arrival of Bernardo Silva and winger Yan Diamonde. Reported pursuits of Michael Olise and Julian Alvarez were turned down by Bayern Munich and Atletico Madrid respectively, a reminder that even a club with Real Madrid's resources doesn't win every battle it enters. Two names, though, have dominated the conversation above everyone else this summer: Rodri and Vinicius Jr., and for very different reasons. Rodri spent this summer proving on the biggest stage possible that he's still one of the best midfielders on the planet. He captained Spain to World Cup glory and walked away with the Golden Ball as the tournament's best player. With just 1 year left on his Manchester City contract, that performance turned a quiet transfer whisper into one of the loudest sagas in European football. Vinicius, meanwhile, has spent the better part of 2 years locked in a contract stalemate with the club he represents since he was a teenager. His current deal runs out in June 2027, and despite plenty of public affection on both sides, an agreement has never quite materialized. Now, with Mourinho newly installed and preseason underway, that unresolved situation is being forced toward a decision point. Here's where things become interesting, because these two stories aren't happening in isolation, they're shaping each other. Every euro Real Madrid spends chasing Rodri is the exact same euro that makes the Vinicius renewal conversation more complicated, and that's exactly where we need to go next. Quick pause here. If breakdowns like this are your thing, go ahead and subscribe now, because this saga is nowhere near finished. Let's talk about Rodri first, because this particular story has moved incredibly fast, even by transfer market standards. Manchester City have made it clear, publicly at least, that they don't want to sell. Reports suggest the club prepared a long-term contract offer to keep him at the Etihad, hoping his loyalty and history there would outweigh interest from elsewhere. But Rodri's mind, by most accounts, has already made it up. Multiple outlets, including Fabrizio Romano, report that Real Madrid made first contact weeks ago and have already agreed personal terms with the player. The complication isn't Rodri's willingness, it's the fee. City are reportedly holding out for a figure between 75 and 80 million euros, using the World Cup performance as leverage. Real Madrid, on the other hand, have capped the valuation closer to 50 to 60 million, pointing to the fact that Rodri has just 1 year remaining on his contract as leverage of their own. That gap is exactly why City reportedly tried something unexpected. Sources indicate the club quietly sounded out other European heavyweights, including Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich, to see if a bidding war could push the price up. For a moment, it looked like it might work. PSG reportedly made direct contact to understand the terms of a potential deal, and Barcelona also made exploratory inquiries of their own, curious whether Rodri's return to Spain had to mean Real Madrid specifically. It didn't take long for that idea to collapse. Both PSG and Bayern Munich are said to have quickly stepped back once Rodri's camp made his preference unmistakably clear. Even Atletico Madrid, his boyhood connection in the Spanish capital, reportedly explored the idea before reaching the same conclusion. The player's representatives have apparently been consistent and direct with every party involved. He wants Real Madrid and nowhere else. That leaves Barcelona in an awkward spot. The club has real defensive midfield needs, and a player of Rodri's profile would address them instantly. But being told indirectly that you're not the priority tends to end interest fairly quickly. Barcelona already has significant financial commitments elsewhere this summer, and pursuing a player who has already agreed personal terms with your fiercest rival is rarely a fight worth having. This wouldn't be the first time Real Madrid has used a player's final contract year as leverage rather than paying full price up front. It's a strategy that's worked before, from Toni Kroos to David Alaba, players who ultimately prefer to move to the Bernabeu over waiting for the highest bidder elsewhere. Still, the direction of travel is obvious. Mourinho is reportedly personally pushing for this signing, viewing Rodri as exactly the kind of experienced, tactically disciplined midfield his rebuild needs. Barring a genuine shock, most reports now treat this less as a rumor and more as a matter of when, not if. If you're enjoying the deep dive so far, tap subscribe before we get into just how close this deal actually is. It helps this channel keep bringing you transfer news the moment it breaks. Now here's where the story gets more complicated, because while one Real Madrid saga is trending toward a happy ending, another is heading in the opposite direction. Vinicius Jr.'s contract situation isn't new. Talks have dragged on for well over a year, and the sticking point has always been financial. Vinicius is believed to be seeking a salary in the region of 30 million euros per season, a figure that would make him comparable to Kylian Mbappe as the club's top earner. Real Madrid, according to multiple Spanish outlets, have refused to go beyond roughly 20 million and have shown no willingness to offer the kind of signing-on bonus that reportedly remains a key demand from the players' camp. Some reports suggest Vinicius has softened his position slightly, lowering his ask closer to 20 to 25 million. But even that reduced number still leaves a gap the club appears unwilling to close on its own. Real Madrid's stance, according to insiders, is less about Vinicius individually and more about protecting the club's overall salary structure going forward. Before we shift deeper into this one, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We're about to get into the part of this story that could define Real Madrid's entire summer. Complicating things further was last season's relationship with Xabi Alonso. Vinicius reportedly grew increasingly frustrated with being substituted and at times left out of the starting lineup, culminating in a public falling out after he was replaced during the first Clásico of the season. Sources close to the situation say that friction made any progress on a new contract essentially impossible while Alonso remained in charge. Mourinho's arrival appears to have reopened the door. Reports out of Madrid suggest there's renewed optimism internally now that the managerial situation is stabilized, and Vinicius has publicly maintained, more than once, that he's never imagined himself playing anywhere else. He returned to preseason training this week, passed his medical, and trained alongside teammates including Brahim Diaz and new arrival Bernardo Silva, all under Mourinho's watch for the first time. But optimism isn't the same as an agreement, and Arsenal are reportedly not waiting around to find out how this ends. The Premier League club has been consistently linked with Vinicius throughout the transfer window, and reports indicate that manager Mikel Arteta has personally spoken with the Brazilian to outline what a project at the Emirates could look like. Real Madrid's own stance, according to sources close to the club, has effectively become an ultimatum: sign the current offer or the club will explore a sale before the transfer window closes. That's a significant shift in tone. This isn't a club desperately trying to convince a player to stay at any cost. It's a club that clearly values Vinicius, but has apparently decided it won't be held hostage by a prolonged standoff, especially not in a summer where funds are already stretched thin by other priorities, Rodri chief among them. This wouldn't be the first time Real Madrid's wage philosophy has cost them a homegrown feeling icon. Sergio Ramos left for nothing back in 2021 after a similarly drawn-out standoff over the final year of his deal, and the club has never fully shaken criticism for how that situation was handled. Vinicius's camp is reportedly well aware of that precedent, and it's part of why timing, not just the size of the offer, matters so much this time around. For now, the two sides are expected to reopen direct talks in the coming days, with the club's season opener against Espanyol on August 22nd adding natural deadline pressure to the entire situation. And if you want to be notified the second either of these deals actually gets confirmed, subscribing is honestly the easiest way to make sure you don't miss it. Step back from the numbers for a second, because there's a human story running underneath both of these situations. For Rodri, this move represents something close to a homecoming. A player who left Spain as a promising young midfielder now has the chance to return as a World Cup winner, a Ballon d'Or holder, and the best player of the most recent tournament on the planet. For Real Madrid's fan base, adding a player of that pedigree to shore up the midfield is exactly the kind of statement signing that signals the club is serious about ending its trophy drought. For Vinicius, the emotional stakes are arguably even higher. This is a player who arrived at 16 years old, endured racist abuse throughout his career in Spanish football, fought through criticism of his end product for years, and eventually became a Champions League winner and one of the most recognizable attackers in the world. Being told your future now hinges on a financial negotiation after everything you've given a club is never a simple thing to process, no matter how professional a player tries to be about it publicly. There's also a dressing room dimension here that shouldn't be ignored. Mourinho is walking into a squad that just went through a difficult managerial transition twice in the span of a single season. How he handles the Vinicius situation, publicly and privately, will say a lot about the tone he wants to set early in his second spell at the club. And then there are the supporters. Real Madrid fans have watched this saga unfold for over a year now, and opinion is genuinely split. Some see letting Vinicius leave as an unthinkable mistake given his importance to the team's identity. Others argue that no player, however talented, should be allowed to hold the club's finances hostage during a summer when reinforcements elsewhere are just as urgent. Meanwhile, over at Barcelona, there's a quieter frustration building. Watching a generational talent like Rodri publicly rule you out isn't just a transfer setback, it's a reminder of where the balance of power in Spanish football currently sits, even after Barcelona's own recent domestic success. Quick reminder to subscribe if you haven't yet, because how Mourinho handles this situation is going to shape the entire mood around the club heading into the new season. So, where does this actually go from here? On the Rodri front, most reports now suggest this deal is more a matter of finalizing the fee than genuinely deciding the outcome. If current trends continue, expect Real Madrid and Manchester City to land somewhere between their two valuations, likely with add-ons and performance-based clauses bridging the final gap. A deal being wrapped up before the end of the transfer window looks like the most likely outcome, assuming Rodri's fitness checks come back clean. The Vinicius Jr. situation is far less predictable. The best-case scenario for Real Madrid fans is straightforward. The two sides meet somewhere in the middle financially, a bonus structure gets creatively worked out, and Vinicius signs an extension that ends the speculation for good. It's possible that Mourinho's presence alone shifts the emotional calculus enough to get a deal done quickly. The worst, and the one Arsenal are clearly positioning for, is a genuine transfer saga that drags into the final weeks of the window, with Real Madrid ultimately deciding a substantial fee now is worth more than the risk of losing him for nothing in 2027. Many observers believe that outcome remains realistic, particularly if talks stall again once preseason friendlies intensify and Rodri's transfer fee becomes clearer. One thing does seem clear, though. However both of these situations resolve, Mourinho's first transfer window back in Madrid is shaping up to be remembered for a long time. One more ask before we wrap up. If this kind of in-depth transfer coverage keeps you coming back, subscribing genuinely helps this channel keep growing, so take a second and do that now. So let's bring it all together. Rodri appears close to completing one of the most decisive transfer stories of the summer, choosing Real Madrid over Barcelona, PSG, and Bayern Munich, with only the final fee standing between him and the Bernabeu. At the very same time, Vinicius Jr., one of the most important players in Real Madrid's recent history, is facing a genuine crossroads, caught between a club unwilling to break its salary structure and a Premier League suitor ready to make him a priority. Two stories, one club, one summer, and a new manager who now has to navigate both at exactly the same time.